Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where we lay an egg just for you. I'm one of your Bizarro hosts, Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert. Bizarro, I love you. Bizarro, I love you.
And today's episode is the Sealab 2021 episode, Bizarro.
I'm helping you.
And today's episode aired on November 17th, 2002, the second year of Adult Swim. And yes, we've covered so many of the early Adult Swim shows, so it only makes sense in the year 2021 that we cover Sealab 2021. We have made it into the year in which Sealab takes place.
Yeah, I couldn't, in 2001, when I was watching Sealab 2021, I couldn't envision what 2021 would look like for me. I wouldn't have imagined what 2021 is.
No, I was starting college when the show started. I didn't know my future job would be talking about Sealab, so it all worked out.
And I do believe we have now covered every first night of Adult Swim show.
Still need to cover the Brack show.
Oh, the Brack show.
It has to happen this year.
It's such a forgettable show. I
have a soft spot for it.
I do love Brack. It was just funny to see, like, Aqua Teen and Sealab totally replaced Brack as like the rando show because everybody aged out of Brack.
Yeah,
you know?
Brack was not hateful.
He wasn't. He's too Andy Merrill. That's not him. He's too nice.
Brack is a sweet boy.
This is a mean fucking show.
Yeah,
this show, man.
It is has the cynicism of Gen X, just like pure strain cynicism. But Henry, we've talked before in the past about what our history with Adult Swim is. But let's refresh the audience's memory. What is your history with Adult Swim and this show?
Oh, yeah. So I am a Space Ghost, Coast to Coast super fan all through its run in the 90s. You know, on the internets, you might hear they're going to do a full expansion of that for original programming for growing teens like me who need dirtier content. And when Adult Swim got announced, at first I was most excited for Space Ghost. And then when I taped the whole night and showed it to my friends the next day. And I loved home movies, but my friends thought it was hideous to look at, and they hated it. Brack show was fine, and I really loved Aqua Teen. And, of course, I was like, oh, yeah, I know Cowboy Bebop. I already watched a ton of this. But I have to say, every friend of mine, their favorite on night one was Sealab. They just loved every bit of it, and it was, must-see viewing. I was just going to watch every night of Adult Swim. And Sealab was always like my third favorite show in the original run because I still liked Aqua Teen and home movies more, but Sealab was like undeniably a funny show. And as I grew up with the show, like I came to like it more too because it made like references that made me feel smart for knowing them of like, oh, I've seen that old movie they're referencing. Space Ghost wouldn't reference that specific old movie. I kind of fell off after like basically the linchpin of the show passed away. And now when I go back to it though, we probably said this on the Archer one, but like I followed those guys continually and I really love seeing their work evolve. That's why when I see them at like their kind of peak on Archer to then go back to watch these, it teleports me back to my early 20s, but I also think like, oh, there's some stuff in here you wouldn't do now. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't do that.
I think they would agree, too.
Yeah.
Well, as for me, when it comes to video games, the best bragging point you could have is, I was there first, because we were in the games industry. We could say that, like, I played the preview build of that before anybody else. And I cannot say that about TV because, I was never in the industry. But for Adult Swim, I can, because I was reviewing anime DVDs. My editor was like, oh, yeah, Cartoon Network sent us some stuff. Do you want it? And I was like, sure. And there were 2 VHS tapes, not DVDs. One was the pilot for Samurai Jack, and one was the entire first night of Adult Swim, weeks before it aired.
Nice.
So I had a heads up on this, and I was like, well, there's no way any of this. Like, I love this. Like, finally, the humor of the internet is on TV. This is all I've ever wanted, but it will never last. And then it did. And now we're about to celebrate the 20th year of Adult Swim. I mean, the 20th anniversary of Adult Swim.
Yeah, it's crazy that it's still going this long, and it started. I mean, it did change, adult animation big time, and really. I like that first year of Adult Swim is building the runway toward Family Guy and Futurama Town, which really changed adult American animation.
That rising tide lifted all ships on the network. Yeah, and I did enjoy this show. I had no idea that it was based on an existing show because nobody did.
If ever Sealab 2020 was even aired on Cartoon Network, which I feel like that would have been rare, I wouldn't watch it because this is a boring action show. It doesn't even have superheroes like the Herculoids or kind of Jack Kirby ripoff sci-fi adventures of Johnny Quest. It's just people in a sea lab underwater.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that original show, but I bet Cartoon Network aired it once, like at 3 a.m., and that was the end of the story. But yeah, I enjoyed this show. Adult Swim started in my second semester of college. It was made for me, a young white man in college.
Yes, yeah.
And like a lot of my college friends and I bonded over this. Like for some reason I considered Sealab 2021 the intellectual show of Adult Swim. And like in one of my college classes, one of the kids had a Sealab hat, and I was like, oh my God, this guy is cool. And I followed this all the way through its entire run. Like I have such a familiarity with like the first decade of Adult Swim because I think for us, it was almost like the first decade of MTV. Like we missed, MTV was huge when we were born. And then by the early 90s, it was like, they don't even show music anymore. But like we were there from the beginning with all this experimental programming. And I think it's cool that they can do real shows like Rick and Morty now, which have actual budgets and actual voice actors and full animation, but I kind of appreciate barely getting away with these barely shows in this early time for Adult Swim. I like how these are barely TV shows, and a lot of them are just engineered to waste your time.
There's a lot of negative you can say about Mike Lazo based on things you read about him, but I do also think that his stoned Atlanta ethos is that he just says like, whatever, put it up. I don't care.
I'm not going to pay you much.
Yeah, I won't pay you much, but I'm going to put it out. Like he's an executive who just was like, yeah, green light, just go. I'll put it on late at night. Like there's when other channels like Spike tried to do their Adult Swim response years after, or even Comedy Central, when they have the linchpin of South Park, neither of them could really figure it out because I think the executive meddling got too involved in it. Like no one would green light a Sealab 2021, a show where characters just yell at each other all the time and nothing happens, and it actively wastes your time, like in your face of like, yeah, we're wasting time. Fuck you.
The closest thing Comedy Central had to an Adult Swim was this weird like 2-year programming block that started at midnight on Sundays, and it was like Dr. Katz, The Tick, Duckman, and something else.
Oh, The Critic.
And The Critic, yeah. The Critic was huge on Comedy Central for just a very short time in the early 2000s, but they were not willing to like pick up new programming, and when they did, it was like, let's do Kid Notorious or Crank Yankers after South Park.
I know, they couldn't just commit to the full, they would never commit to the full Critic show, and I think it was like budget-wise, it certainly would have been more expensive than South Park to pay what Gracie Films expects to do more episodes of Critic, but that's when it came time for Cartoon Network to put Family Guy in the same position, Fox actually stepped up and was like, yeah, you know what? More Family Guy. We can do this. We'll sell the DVDs. The Critic came at just the wrong time. It was like 3 years too early for everything.
We could have had season 3. And speaking of things that aired after South Park, a brief tangent. I cannot believe there has been a Crank Yankers revival. And then on Twitter, I saw a Crank Yankers ad with product integration from KFC.
Oh, no.
What hell world are we living in?
God, I mean, it's like with Corolla back, it's like, no, I thought we all understood Corolla is just a Republican talking head now. We don't do this.
Prank call PragerU.
Yeah, exactly.
And ask for his tuition back.
I know. Fucking call that 80-year-old pile of crap, Dennis Prager, and make fun of him. That would actually be gutsy instead of like calling a confused like maid or whatever.
Dennis Prager, former collaborator with Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Go back to our South Park episode.
Right.
They don't like him though. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's talk about the origins of Sealab. So we covered a bit of this in our Archer podcast, but that was over 2 years ago.
Oh yeah, and we've learned so much since then.
It's very true. And because Sealab is turning 20, or technically it has turned 20, there have been new interviews and stuff, so we can talk about those. But so this all begins with Adam Reed and Matt Thompson. So Adam Reed started working with frequent collaborator Matt Thompson as a production assistant at Cartoon Network in the mid-90s. So they joined in the very early years of the network, and they described it as a place where like a bunch of young, insane people could do whatever they wanted to do as long as they didn't expect any money.
Yeah, PA is like one step above intern. You don't really like that. Yeah, it's as somebody who cares about, fair practices and not exploiting people, it is annoying to me that they used so much of these like poor people, like these young people who just like, oh yeah, work to death, we'll pay you shit. But it did allow for some things that no one would ever pay for, like just to happen. And I do like the kind of sneaky spirit of like, yeah, we're guys in our 20s. No one's watching what we do, or few people are. Let's just do a weird ass thing and put that on TV.
Yeah, like Ted Turner just built a rerun sandbox for us to play in. And I mean, they weren't paid well, but they were also like living in the outskirts of Atlanta. They weren't like working out of LA. So I assume that it was slightly more doable.
Well, and as a Southern boy myself, I do kind of like that feel of it, of like, these are slackers of the Southern variety. Like most entertainment we watch is made out of Los Angeles, and if not Los Angeles, then New York. Almost so little of what we watch, other than until Adult Swim, was made anywhere else in America. And so like this Atlanta vibe, which is a big city, I know Fry embodied people laughing at the idea of like, yes, Atlanta, it's just
Delta
like
hub.
New York. Yeah. But Atlanta is like a real city with a real culture. And so having like sleepless stoned guys working in the same building as like CNN and World Championship Wrestling is just such a funny, man, if I could work anywhere, I that would be one of them, just to be in that building then.
Yeah, instead of like being
paid minimum wage as well.
Instead of being like in the origins of MTV in New York, I would want to be like in Atlanta in 1993 in my early 20s. That sounds like a dream to me. So yeah, the origins of Adult Swim start there. So a bunch of young Gen Xers who have access to the entire Hanna-Barbera library and have a ton of freedom, and they're mostly just putting together bumpers, and they're putting together, interstitial programming. And like a lot of these guys, I think it was one of these guys who said like, I had to watch every Flintstones and flag every time Dino was on the screen, and then that way someone could put together a commercial with nothing but Dino clips in it. So they were like intimately familiar with all of this garbage.
I kind of love that it also, that's so great. It comes from like this cataloging, analytical, like list making spirit too, like these weirdos who have to make lists. And also that's why so much of the spirit of those old bumpers on Cartoon Network back then were kind of like, yeah, this show sucks, but what else? You'll watch it. It's on.
Yeah, we don't like it either. Just what we have.
It's Thunder.
And like this is just like the origins of any cable network, in that they don't want to pay for original programming. And go back to the Simpsons cable episode. We see cable as a wasteland with nothing but reruns and old movies. It was an era in which original programming was rare, and it mostly existed on paid channels like HBO, Showtime, the Disney Channel, things like that.
And Ted Turner was such a pioneer of cable entertainment that he at least knew like why, USA Network, for example, they just licensed the Hanna-Barbera back catalog, And in the early 90s, he's like, no, I should just own all of it. These are hundreds of hours, easy to fill time on my channels with all of this. Same with then when he bought the back catalog of the MGM movies, same deal. Like he was knew about, intellectual property ownership before others.
Yeah, and all of these things form the backbone of Cartoon Network and TNT and TBS, just all of these reruns and movies, colorized and in black and white. So Matt Thompson was the first one hired, and he was asked to pitch interstitial material for Cartoon Network. When he was asked, and when he was, asked to pitch this idea, he was incredibly hungover, had no ideas, so he basically started making his hand talk like a puppet. And this very desperate pitch led to something called High Noon Tunes, which was a 3-hour block of cartoons hosted by Cowboy Hand Puppets.
I remember.
And this is where Matt Thompson meets Adam Reed, because Adam Reed is hired to write for that interstitial program and be a hand puppet. So a lot of the Cartoon Network programming is a framing device around old Warner Brothers shorts or old Tom and Jerry shorts. It's just like they're not actually making original entertainment, but there's a framing device around it, which is like Mystery Science Theater and Beavis and Butthead. We've seen this before.
Yeah, it's and it turns into like a great proving ground for talent. To like it, these guys aren't handed like, okay, do a 22 or even 11-minute show. Like, can you just write a sketch, be funny for 2 minutes, and then perform it yourself? You have to do every character because we're not hiring actors and writers. Like, yeah.
And there are a few clips of this on YouTube, but they're in very poor quality, so no one really remembers High Noon Tunes, but that was their first collaboration. And then they were asked to work on what they considered a ripoff of Pee-wee's Playhouse, a show that they loved. It was Carrot Top's AM Mayhem, which was another like host throwing to cartoons, but this time it was high energy prop comic Carrot Top.
Yes. He brought the energy, at least. The only bit I remember from that is him introducing a Hair Bear Bunch cartoon while holding his hair in a crazy way and flopping it around like, the Hair Bear Bunch.
And that was before he was a freakish steroid mutant who I would run if I saw him.
We all made fun of him too much, and he's like, fine, I'm keeping my hair the same, but I will become a giant, and you will fear me. You will fear Carrot Top. And also, I'll live in Las Vegas, so only the people who like me around
he has his own like gilded cage.
Yes.
So the reason they left during this show is because of Sealab, but we'll get to that very soon. So they leave Cartoon Network, they go to New York, they spend a lot of time working behind the scenes and entirely uncredited on Showtime specials. So like friend of the show Eric Siska, they're in New York working at Showtime, although in different eras. And then once they're done working at Showtime, they formed their own production company, 70/30 Productions, based on how much each one of them would write and produce. So Adam Reed would write 70% and produce 30%, and Matt Thompson would do vice versa.
Okay, right, because writing is just half of the battle of making stuff. Yeah.
But by the time they got to Archer, Matt Thompson is writing nothing. It's mostly Adam Reed, but Matt Thompson is a vital part of their organization.
I mean, Adam Reed is a really good writer. He kind of it sounds a bit like the Trey Parker Matt Stone combo as well.
Entirely. Yeah. So currently, these two guys are working on season 12 of Archer, which was renewed in October of 2020. So there is more Archer. They're in season 12 of that, and they are still hard at work on that series, despite the loss of Jessica Walter.
Yeah, I don't know what that mirrors a thing that happened with Sealab, and I feel...
Although they had 2 years of Captain Murphy.
Yeah, it's true. In this, R.I.P. Jessica Walter, she's the greatest, and she's not the lead in the show, and there's tons of other funny people in it. I dropped off of Archer in season 9 or so, because I was like, I feel like they're just spinning in circles a little bit, but hey, we'll see what that season 12 is. They should, but once you lost Jessica Walter, just stop.
Yeah, it's time to move on. Let's talk about the history of Sealab 2021. So this all starts in the fall of 1972 with a little show no one ever loved called Sealab 2020. The joke is this is 1 year later. Everyone has gone insane from living in the Sealab. That's why in the opening credits, 2020 ticks over to 2021 before the show starts.
Which it sells itself on this idea like, well, you all remember Sealab 2020, right? Like, no. The first episode's on YouTube of 2020. I watched it, and it's so boring.
Yeah, there's no humor. Maybe a character will make like a slight wisecrack, but that's it. And the only highlight of the show is what's present in 2021, which is the very good character designs by Iwao Takamoto.
Yeah,
Yeah, so Scooby-Doo designer, Scooby-Doo cast designer, big guy at Hanna-Barbera, like he designed those characters. That's why they look so good.
Yeah, they all look great. For a Star Trek ripoff, the characters at least look pretty good, and they have the kind of level of diversity that Star Trek had as well, except no space aliens. But the problem is, if you're like, well, hey, let's take Star Trek, but they're only in one place and no one goes anywhere and it's just underwater. They can't even be visited by aliens.
We'll save a lot of money on backgrounds.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Once, you got to be cost effective. They got to pump out as much as possible. Everybody wanted 5 Hanna-Barbera cartoons every Saturday morning season. Though I guess actually what I just described of a Star Trek where people come to them and instead of going somewhere, that was Deep Space Nine, which is a really great Star Trek series, but that's not what Sealab is.
And very few of the characters on Sealab 2020 retain their names in 2021. I believe Sparks and Murphy are the only two. And in the original show, it's Mike Murphy. In the Sealab 2021 version, it's Hank Murphy. So
sure.
A man after your own heart.
Oh, yes. I always appreciate more Hank representation.
But again, nobody ever knew about this show. It was the perfect fodder for what early Adult Swim was, which was recontextualizing these rotten shows, with a snarky Gen X style where you're making fun of it, but also you're making your own versions of these characters. And this original show, one season didn't even air all of its episodes. It was that unpopular.
Wow, geez. I mean, yeah, it's so boring. I wonder, if 72, I think that's the same year as Star Trek, the animated series. So maybe that was just like one ABC or NBC got one or the other, and then they just say like, well, hey, we lost Star Trek. Can you give us like a Star Trek thing, Hanna-Barbera? And Joseph Barbera's like, of course, I can do anything.
I can do it overnight.
We'll rip off whatever you need.
It'll be stiff and boring. So, okay, let's fast forward to like 23 years later. It's the mid-90s.
It's in a vault for 23 years.
It's rotting in a vault. It's the mid-90s. Thompson and Reed were frustrated working on this awful Carrot Top show, and they wanted to pitch their own show to Cartoon Network. So they were attracted to Sealab as their source material because at the time News Radio was their favorite sitcom, and they wanted to rework old footage into a workplace comedy. So what they did was in 1995 they created the first Sealab pilot, and because they had no video production skills or they were very limited, all they could do was redub an existing episode of Sealab 2020. They admit now that it sucked, but at the time they thought Cartoon Network was crazy for passing on it, and that's why they left, because they were like, this is amazing, we are transforming this thing that nobody wants to see into a new show, and you don't have to pay that much money for it. And they're like, this is weird, we don't want this.
Space Ghost works on that same principle of original footage and then reworking it to make you say what you want, but in that case they have to isolate a Space Ghost and just have like, well, here's the 20 isolated Space Ghosts we have. They usually, I mean, sometimes, like, say, the fight against Banjo, they would just have, like, here's the straight footage from episode Space Ghost. But more often, it was about, you do have to do some post-production work and just not talk over old footage.
Yeah, there's, like, when you watch Space Ghost, where it's like, well, there are 5 Moltar animated GIFs, there are 20 Space Ghost animated GIFs, and there are, like, 10 Zorak animated GIFs. And that's why some of them will be literally clipped out of the old footage. Some of them will be drawn by C. Martin Croker. Zorak will be 3 different shades of green throughout the show. It's they had a lot of fun trying to make the most of this limited technology. But yeah, the original Sealab pilot from 1995 never been made available to the public, but the closest they came to doing this again was the worst episode of Sealab, where they truncated an original episode, did not change the dialogue, and just revoiced it with their current voice cast. It's awful, and it's not funny, and it's on HBO Max, but again, that's like, we're gonna waste your time. And that's what they did, and they probably saved a lot of money too.
Yeah, I mean, also they've it seemed I rewatched the majority of the series in the month preceding this recording, and there were multiple episodes where I was like, this is the point in the season where you stretch too thin, and you gotta turn off the lights for a while, or just recut an episode and have your actors just say all the old lines.
Yeah, they did not have a lot of money, and we'll get into that soon. So they believed so much in the Sealab idea that they stole the analog masters of Sealab 2020 when they left Cartoon Network
That's that.
in
Yeah.
1996. So they're like, this is ours. We're going to do something with this, and you'll never be able to air Sealab again. And Sealab was so like, discarded. Nobody was like, where's the Sealab tapes? We have to air Sealab.
I would think their bosses aren't catching that was lost or give a crap about it. Yeah.
So by 1999, they had learned a lot about editing and making limited animation from working at Showtime. So they created a second pilot and sent it unsolicited to Cartoon Network. This one is online. You can watch it on YouTube because it was on one of the DVD sets. The show is a lot like what Sealab would eventually become, except in this stage it is just Thompson and Reed doing all the voices, but the theme song is there in an earlier version. So it's mostly figured out. And they are just re-editing animation. They're not creating their own animation for the most part quite yet.
Any original animation was a challenge on that show, even more than on the William Street shows. They could lean on C. Martin Croker, but 70-30 didn't have that.
It's interesting to see the show evolve as they got more money, because in the beginning, Adam Reed said their budget was $33,000 per episode. And that might sound like a lot, but they have to pay 8 voice actors and then make their show and then pay themselves. So and of course Adult Swim is making millions off of this, but if you watch the show from the very beginning, you can see like, okay, they are actually using old footage and putting new words in the mouth. They're also clipping out characters from old footage and putting a mouth on it. But by the time you get to season 3, you're like, oh, these are all original assets they created. Like, they have their own Murphy they can move around. It's not an existing Murphy from an episode. It's not a clip of Murphy. They are just animating everything uniquely. There's no like reuse involved.
That's part of the fun. Some of the funniest just shots to look at are like, oh, that's the original like head from an episode you cut out, and then you drew the body around like all the face, and you made technically a new character.
I mean, all the Bizarro ones are just them redrawing the characters and moving them around. So going back to the history, it's a bit fuzzy, but in 1999 they create the second Sealab pilot. I'm not sure when they pitch it again, but at some point that they did pitch it again. Mike Lazo at the time was spearheading Adult Swim, and Sealab was obviously the perfect pick for this new block of shows they were creating because it was a property Cartoon Network already owned. They could make it without Thompson and Reed because it's their footage. They own it. And I think that was the agreement, like, you guys make this or we will. I think that's basically what they told them. I read in an older interview.
Boy, that's it's kind of a mean way to deal with them, but geez.
But and it fit with the same, like, outside of Aqua Teen, everything is like, here are old shitty cartoons, and we're going to have fun with them now.
Yeah, from these old shitty cartoons, they're going to say what you don't expect them to say.
And you know what? I saw, this is, we're about a month from this episode going live, or maybe 2 months. I don't know. I don't know what year it is or month it is anymore. But, like, I saw the thing, the Jellystone show.
Yes,
and made by, very talented people. But a part of it I don't like is, like, we are supposed to like these characters now. And you go back 20 years in time to, like, Harvey Birdman and these old shows. Like, no, you are supposed to despise them. Every character, the recontextualization of them is that they're a depressed alcoholic with like sexual hang-ups, and they're all monsters, and that's the version I like. Now we have to like Yogi Bear again.
No, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the guys there were, I think it was just the Warner AOL merger. There was just no Stewart Hauer who said, like, let's care about the Hanna-Barbera characters instead of like these are B tier at best in our company, other than Scooby-Doo. Like, that was in that first year of Adult Swim, it was Harvey Birdman. They could do jokes about the Super Friends who were made up for Super Friends, but you can't do shit about Batman. And when they tried to do a Scooby-Doo episode or a Flintstones episode, that was the wall. But if you weren't Scooby or Flintstones or Batman, like, it didn't seem like Warner gave much of a shit about it.
Just all of this corporate consolidation means, like, everything is potentially a cast member in some version of Ready Player One.
Yes.
Which is why we must protect all IP. All IP is valid. It's like, no, why can't we hate this stuff?
If you were to goof on or say, hey, these guys are kind of gay, right, or whatever, that takes away the inherent value of them. It's not. I guess we can blame the Mickey Mouse shorts of the last decade because those redid Mickey Mouse and made him popular with kids again, when it really was just like, hey, what if we did like SpongeBob shorts except Mickey's the star of them? And that's pretty much seems to be the pitch of Yellow Jellystone, which is like they hire the Chowder guy, and it looks good. I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah, the Chowder is a great cartoon. No one remembers, but I trust him to make a good cartoon.
But definitely it feels just like those rudish Mickey Mouse shorts of respecting the characters. The joke isn't on the characters. They're fun and silly cartoons that harken back to a history, but the joke isn't these guys suck. Like Yogi wasn't funny. That isn't the joke in those.
Mm-hmm. To wrap up my Sealab history here, it ran 52 episodes like your regular run, like a 52 or 65 episode order, spread across 4 seasons running from September 2nd, 2001 to April 24th, 2005. So like in my peak Adult Swim watching, I watched all of these. I watched everything on Adult Swim from the first week to basically when Tim and Eric's show ended.
Oh, wow.
That was my run of it.
You know, I think my drop-off was of regular watching was when Super Jail came on. I just bounced off of that. I was not into Super Jail. I'd always come back in of like, oh, and the new venture, it's once every 2 years, a new Venture Brothers is here. Yes. I'll see what else is on Adult Swim.
Blink and you'll miss it if there's a new Venture Brothers season. But, you know, that's coming back, and so is Aqua Teen on HBO Max.
No Sealab, though, but that's because Archer, they're too busy with Archer. They couldn't do a Sealab movie. And also like I think there's a reason they shouldn't ever go back to Sealab.
I totally agree. Let's talk about other people who worked on the show. So we covered Reed and Thompson. There is one other writer on about a dozen episodes. His name is John J. Miller, whose only other writing credits are some episodes of Super Jail. So that's all. He was just like a guy who's helping with some of the early episodes, but I don't know who he is or why he was there or why he was working on Super Jail. But that's who that guy is.
Okay. It's funny. I just mentioned Super Jail. I mean, I had heard that one of the voice actors and Rap Master did some writing again, but under like a pseudonym or something.
And animation. We'll get to him. And something about the show tells me it was recorded in New York based on like the people involved and what else they worked on.
Yes.
So I'll talk about the cast of Sealab. So number one, R.I.P. to a real one, Harry Gause.
Yeah.
Great name, Harry Gause.
So good.
As Captain Hank Murphy. So Harry Gause was in his mid-60s, I think, or late 60s when he was cast as Captain Murphy. But in the mid-60s of history, he was a regular character actor on TV and movies. I'm sorry, in Broadway. He was in things like Fiddler on the Roof in the mid-60s. Wow. And sorry, by the 70s, he was a regular character actor in TV and movies. Apparently, he loved doing the role of Captain Hank Murphy to the point where he even wanted to play the role of Murphy during his final weeks in his fight against cancer. And there's a story in the recent interview with, I believe, Thompson, in which there's one episode in which that I watched in which Murphy, for some reason, is wearing a giant old-fashioned like diving helmet over his head, and his voice is very muffled. That's because he just sounded so weak, and they felt bad. They didn't want to say no, but they wanted to disguise how weak and sickly he sounded because he was dying.
That was so sad, like, to realize. He takes over the show. Like, season 2 has multiple episodes that are like, well, just have Murphy do 90% of all dialogue. Like, he's the most interesting. Everybody of my friends, when we watched that first episode, they laugh at Stormy fine. They laugh at the other characters fine. But it was every line Murphy said was just like howling with laughter.
Yeah, hearing this deranged old man was very funny. He loved it. There's like a few episodes where they do outtakes where he's like, there go my nipples again. They make him read it in 9 different ways. So you could tell like he had fun on this.
Yeah, I remember watching his last episode where his character gets put into a robot, a Barbobot. His voice is so affected in that. Well, meanwhile, when he's like the mouse version of him, he really does have like a quiet voice. And then I think right after that aired, one of the Adult Swim bumpers said he had died. I was like, fuck, that's why he sounded so. It was such a heartbreaker.
That's how I found out. So he passed away in September of 2003, right around the same time as Johnny Cash and John Ritter.
Wow. Oh man.
So 20 years ago we had Ritter, Cash, and Gause, and now we got none. Thanks, Obama.
Yeah.
And his son Michael actually took over as Captain Tornado Shanks, the new captain of Sealab, and
he's fine.
And he passed away. He's dead now too.
What the fuck?
He died in 2014.
Jeez, I didn't know that. That's Tornado Shanks is fine, but rewatching the post Gause episodes, of seasons, the last 2 seasons. I think they're fine. They're good. They even get really creative. You can see them learning all these techniques they're going to do in Archer and expand on in there and in Frisky Dingo.
Mm-hmm.
But the show was built around Murphy, and then he died, and they kind of have to find themselves again, and they never really do.
Yeah, and I was watching some of the Tornado Shanks episodes, and they really feel to me like mostly like a satire of George W. Bush era America, because he is like a Southerner, he is like a fundamentalist.
Yes.
I think that is where that humor is rooted in, just like political humor of the time.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's it's harder for me to go back to like W jokes now, I guess, too. It's so in the past.
So up next, we went over Harry Gaz. Our big superstar of Sealab is Eric Estrada as Marco. You kids remember Chips, right? Well, it's not quite a chip and it's not quite a piss, but boy, can they ever ride motorcycles. And that's he was Paunch on Chips. Like if you were alive in the late 70s, early 80s, you probably watched Chips. It was like a Knight Rider, Miami Vice style action TV show, and this is his claim to fame.
I can't believe Dax Shepard was able to get a Chips movie made. Can you believe it? No one remembers it. It didn't even run in reruns in our childhood.
The only reason I remembered it was because I was like, what else did Eric Estrada do? Oh, a cameo in the Chips movie.
Yes, yeah. The only reason I knew Chips was because in the 90s, when Gen Xers were writing stuff, like on Talk Soup, they'd just be like, hey, it's Eric Estrada. And it's just, now I know it's because Eric Estrada lived in L.A. and they're like, yeah, we could just call Eric Estrada. It'd be funny if he showed up. You'd be like, hey, that's Eric Estrada. And there. We got the scene written already.
And yeah, it's cool that he did this. He's asked to say a lot of ridiculous things and seemingly not a lot of voice acting before or after. I assume Eric Estrada lives most of his life behind or in front of a Meet Eric Estrada sign at like conventions.
He seems like a nice enough guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I feel like they only they cast him too because it's like Marco sort of looks like him.
He really does, yeah.
He does, yeah.
So up next we have Brett Butler as Quinn, and no, not the star of Grace Under Fire. So when I saw Brett Butler in the credits, I thought it was the Brett Butler doing the voice of Debbie for a long time, and I'm sure he hates being named Brett Butler.
He must, the character of Quinn, it was this thing that Aqua Teen also had of just like, well, we have one black actor on the show and we're going to make him shoulder a whole lot of bullshit because like, hey, you're black, like you're the black guy. And like, I like how that turned into a joke in the show when they do the show within a show episode in like season 2 or early 3. His character for the scene has to do like a blaxploitation film parody.
Right.
And he kind of is like, this is racist. Like, this sucks.
I do love his performance, and I think a lot of the character is a comment on how he is the token black guy in this Sealab original character design pack. Like that is his the point of him basically.
Yeah. And his the best use of him for jokes like in this episode is that he's the character who's like, please, the premise, everyone.
Yes.
Let's stick to the premise. And everybody else is insane around him.
He's usually the most sane person in the entire group. And so
he also has to have like a big dick and fucks good.
And he fucks a lot.
Yeah.
So this is just the first of a few acting roles he had. He's mainly a sound editor in TV, and he's done a ton of TV show sound editing since 2002. Wow. So that is what he does. He's not really an actor, but he does a great job on this show.
He's great. He's great as Quinn. Like I love him on the show. He does so much with this role and like is handed some crap. One of the weakest episodes in my rewatch was, and it was very South Parky, of just his character being written to hate affirmative action, and then everybody is using like some aspect of them that's like say, oh well, I'm differently abled, or I'm a woman, or I'm Hispanic, and then everybody uses that to become the captain. So everyone's a captain except Quinn, who wants to earn it through merit instead of cheating the system. And it's just complaining about affirmative action like Gone Wild, which like that is absolutely, you look back on it now like, 17 years ago was affirmative action running wild. I don't think so.
No. Hey, there's a King of the Hill episode about that. We'll get to it soon, buddy. Where it's like affirmative action is bad.
Yep.
So Kate Miller as Debbie, the smoky voice Debbie, white Debbie, not black Debbie. There is a character named Black Debbie on the show, according to the character. So a lot of bit parts in the mid to late 90s. Her first voice acting gig before this was on Celebrity Deathmatch, and she did imitations of smoky voiced female celebrities. I think like Susan Sarandon was one of them.
Okay.
So yeah, I love her voice too, and this is really her first regular role on a show.
She is great. Also written to be a character who's like, the first episode is her being like a demanding one man have sex with her to get her pregnant, and then it's just downhill from there on the sex machine, which they then turn into a joke in the show of like she complains like, I'm not just a slutty girl who fucks all the time, and then in the next scene she whips her boobs out. Yes.
And yes, in this episode her boobs are prominently jutting out from the rope she's tied up in.
Hey, again, don't mean butt if it ain't got that jut.
Exactly. That's the Sealab motto. So she would go on to play Grace Ryan in their next series, Frisky Dingo, and since then she's been a working actor. Lots of small parts in live action roles and voice acting roles as well. So another great voice actor coming up here with a weird background and continually weird life is the great named Ellis Hennikin as Stormy. So he is a weird pick because Ellis Hennikin is actually a political pundit, and he is one of those 90s Republicans who is now a Joe Biden Democrat thanks to our friends at the Overton window.
Yay.
Like, Trump has gone too far. I am now a conservative Democrat, just like my buddy Joe Biden.
Boy.
Yes. Listen, I'm not sure if he said anything reprehensible. He's not on Twitter. But when I searched his name on Twitter, all I found were Trump maniacs upset that he was invited onto Newsmax. Like, I can't believe you invited this communist.
I see.
So,
all right,
yeah.
God. All right. So he's a never Trumper type guy. But I guess that's he is funny and has a funny voice in this show.
He wrote a bunch of books. He's written a lot of books, including 2014's The Party Is Over, How the Extreme Right Hijacked the GOP, and I Became a Democrat.
Oh, boo. That sentiment, I'm like, the Republican Party is exactly the same as it was. How could anybody who was a Republican through the Iraq War and the complete shift, like, everything under the Bush administration, then be like, what the fuck happened to the Republican Party and after Mitt Romney? It's like, no, it's the same.
Yeah, it's like
the same.
Maybe it just got a little too rude for Ellis here.
I guess. But I mean, that's the marketing. That's how you sell a fucking book. You say like, actually, I'm a Democrat now. And then a bunch of dumb liberals are like, hey, he's a Democrat now. I'll give this to my conservative relative and say, do you see how this guy became a Democrat?
It's really hard to dislike him because he just sounds like Stormy. And I have a clip of him on the O'Reilly Factor in like 2008 talking about Obama's millionaire tax, so we can hear that. I mean, it just sounds like Stormy having a debate with O'Reilly.
Ginned up about taxing the rich. So what about those muffins,
I want one of those muffins. Listen, I am perfectly happy, Bill, to join your anti-muffin jihad. I mean, $16 muffins by a bunch of DEA agents and U.S. attorneys, deplorable, and we can agree that it's a dreadful thing. However, we cannot allow our upset about that to paralyze us as we go and solve some of the broader problems here, one of which is that there are people in our economy at the very top who are not paying their fair share.
That's Bizarro, Stormy.
Wow, that's weird. I was waiting for the turn. I'm like, I guess I sort of agree with
Man, Henry, why do you want to hate Ellis Hennikin?
He
became a Democrat.
I guess fine, but it's just so funny hearing his voice there. Just saying, because he plays like the dumbest guy on a show full of like everyone being stupid. He's the dumbest character.
He really is. So yeah, that is Ellis Hennikin. Look him up. He's got a fun voice, and also Bill Lobley as Spark. So he also came from Celebrity Deathmatch.
Of course.
Weirdly enough, which makes me think this was recorded in New York. Celebrity Deathmatch, Broadway actor, all these things are coming together.
Oh, yeah.
And like Kate Miller, this is his first regular voice role. And he would go on to do a ton of voice acting in video games, usually as like additional voices, not like as the people who yell in the background of GTA, Red Dead Redemption or whatever.
That also sounds like, recording engineer type guy. Or he's like, oh, hey, we got this other guy here. Can he just say like, hey, stop there? Or,
or I'm walking here. And then finally, Chris Ward as Hesh, but you might know him best as MC Chris. He was a fixture of Adult Swim in the first 4 years before he left to focus on his recording career. Also made a lot of appearances on Aqua Teen as various rapping villains.
Yeah,
like MCP Pants.
Right next to Gentleman's Club. I think we both can embarrassingly say we drove around and listened to many burned CDs of his music back then.
And the Boba Fett rap is in an episode of Sealab. And you know what? I was into some of this in my late teens, early 20s, and I'm slightly embarrassed about it. But then I recently, for the research of this episode, I went back to listen to MC Chris stuff, and I say, you know what? He is talented. This is what he is talented at. He has 12 albums, and now he also does children's music, which is perfect for him. And I listen to some of his kids' songs, and they're good too.
That's good, man. It's a little embarrassing how some of our favorites from 2001, like They Might Be Giants and MC Chris, are like, oh, we write children music very easily. It makes me feel like, oh, I just had a baby brain and I like to baby music.
Well, honestly, Weezer should just write about your ABCs or whatever. I mean,
they went the other direction of like, oh, we're writing for people 10 years older than our original audience too. But that Boba Fett song, I mean, too, it was in 2001. Hey, isn't it? It's pretty novel to hear a rap about Boba Fett. That was the early internet, you know. My backpacks got jets.
And sampling the theme song from Gauntlet to make a rap about getting high off Robitussin.
Yeah.
I mean, I was the coolest guy in Youngstown, Ohio, driving around.
Yeah, I think I hadn't heard of MC Chris until hearing the Boba Fett song on the a Sealab episode, but just him as Hesh going like, Hesh wants some sex. And it's being a guy who in the third person demands things.
And he's got a great voice.
Yeah, he does.
He's got a really fun, distinct voice. But yeah, that is basically my history of Sealab. Before we go, though, I do want to read a 2020 thought from Adam Reed on Sealab 2021. So this is what Adam says, quote, every once in a while, I'll watch an episode and go, that was all right. But equally, I go, oof, what was that thing about? It's strange to watch something that you made 20 years ago. You know, if you ask somebody about what their job was that week 20 years ago, they likely don't remember what they were doing. But I plug in or click on the internet or on HBO Max, and it's like, holy cow, that's what I was doing when I was 26. There it is, remember? So it's like a living, breathing, hey, remember this, which is always interesting. And I mean, I never made a TV show. This is Bob Mackey speaking. But yeah, I can go back to articles of mine that were still online from when I was 26 and be like, wow, that was my opinion then. I hope no one finds this.
Yeah, no, I've read things that are just a decade old of mine and like, oh, I suck. Like, I was bad. This was dumb. I hate everything I wrote. Or no, that's not true. Sometimes I see things I'm like, oh, I'm entertained by that, or I did a good job.
Why did no one support this young boy?
Yeah, but you see how much you've grown since then. That's interesting for Reed that he can be like, oh, this very popular thing, which I think that kind of bleeds through in the show too, of that they knew how big it was and they also knew they weren't making like any fucking money off of it. I think that's also why the negativity is so high in that show.
Something about it, I think it got the most complaints from fans, or people are always angriest the most about Sealab, because I was in like threads every Sunday night and people were complaining. So I think they were getting very Simpson-y with how angry they were at their own fans.
Oh yeah, I mean they had multiple episodes of like, I remember that MC Chris played a angry forum user who like couldn't stop masturbating. Like that was his mother said, you have to have both hands above your table, otherwise I know you'll be masturbating, while talking about the one character on Sealab you like.
But yeah, Sealab was just the very beginning of a very long career for Reed and Thompson, and who knows what they'll do after Archer becomes unpopular.
Yeah, and now you can just like stream all 52 episodes just on HBO Max.
Boy, oh boy, the show was barely made for SD TVs. You can see everything.
Yeah,
you can see like, oh my god, I know what quality that JPEG was saved at.
Yes,
you guys got to work at a higher level. It's just like, were you running out of hard drive space?
No, I think it's the Bebop Cole episode that has all these original assets in it for one of their first times, and I was like, ooh boy, that looks bad on my HD TV, on my 4K TV.
But in a way it's fun because, I mean, Rick and Morty is supposed to look crude, but it's actually a very well done show, animated overseas in Korea by Rough Draft, directed by Wes Archer. It's fun to see. They started with a bunch of 20-year-olds moving things around in Adobe Premiere and working flying by the seat of their pants, and then they eventually evolve into full animation, full TV animation, and this is where it all started.
And I did love that the final episode of the show, rewatching it one more time, it's one of my favorites. Like, their final great FU is that the episode frames itself as, this is a 30-minute special, and we're going to premiere Tin Fins 2 at the end of this. But then at the end of it, that has no credits or anything, then just like, and we'll be right back with Tin Fins 2. Then the white text of Adult Swim shows up like, no, we're not. This is the last Sealab. Thank you. Goodbye. And it's just over.
It's perfect because every Adult Swim show had a screw you ending.
Yeah.
Like, I think Brack was, they all turned into penguins, and Brack says, I can't believe we all turned into penguins and were canceled.
Yep. Yeah. This is over. Just done. Yeah.
But yes, that was the history of Sealab 2021. When we come back, we'll talk about the episode Bizarro.
Great, you're the man of the hour, the VIP. You get the first slice of the PIE, but first blow out the candles and make a wish, put a smile on, cause it's your birthday, bitch. Go robot, it's your birthday. Go robot, it's your birthday.
Seriously, what a bunch of holes. It's not even my birthday.
All right, attention swimmers, or swimmer. Got some announcements to make here. Sundays at 10, it's all kids out of the pool for Adult Swim.
You can't just decide to go swimming whenever you want.
That's when there'll be new shows. New shows, home movies.
Who went wee-wee in my canteen?
Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Look at my freaking car.
The Brack Show.
You fell. Your father and Race were...
Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law. Sealab 2021.
You broke the monitor, and you're dead. Happy?
Cowboy Bebop. And Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
This is Willie Nelson.
No kids under 17, though. So that's new, too. Sunday at 10. Adult Swim on Cartoon Network.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the break for our episode about Sealab 2021, or should I say, Bizarro Break. You'll be hearing the word Bizarro a lot throughout this podcast. Don't turn it into a drinking game. Who else is here with me today?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, back from a trip to Grizzlebees. The whole family loves it.
And yes, welcome to the break. Thanks for listening to it, by the way. And if you want to support our show is completely fan-supported, and get all these episodes 1 week at a time and ad-free and a lot of stuff on top of that, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up there for $5 a month. You'll get all the advanced episodes, but also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That is every bonus podcast we've made for the past 4+ years. It'll be available to you the second you sign up. And that includes all of our limited miniseries. The most recent one that we did was Talking of the Hill, Season 2, Part 1. That's 11 new episodes of Talking of the Hill, our King of the Hill retrospective podcast. And there is another miniseries coming at you in the fall of 2021. Other miniseries we've done in the past have included things like Talking Critic and Talking Mission Hill. And now Talking Futurama is a monthly series for $5 and up patrons. So you'll get that regularly if you sign up at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And there is a $10 level as well. When you sign up for that, you get all the $5 stuff, of course, but also one mega long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that podcast, Henry?
Bob is talking about the What a Cartoon movie podcast. Just like we went super in-depth into Sealab this week, once a month we cover an animated feature film just as intensely, which means they are often over 4 hours long, sometimes even up to 5 hours long. On the What a Cartoon movie podcast, you get to enjoy the summer of the Disney Renaissance, which we've been doing lately. You've heard it in the free feed, our previews of Hunchback of Notre Dame, and before that, Hercules. We talked a ton about those. This month, if you sign up at $10 a month, you can hear both of those, and then listen to our brand new one we're going to be doing on The Lion King, the 1994 Disney classic as well. And we have a giant back catalog of films as diverse from Akira to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse to Beavis and Butthead to America to Kiki's Delivery Service and everything else in between. Over 150 hours of exclusive premium podcasts in addition to all of the cool stuff you get to hear at the $5 level that Bob just mentioned. A giant back catalog. You got to check it out if you visit patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it's so easy to do. And once you sign up, you're given access to a code. You just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And that way you can integrate our bonus podcast alongside your free podcast as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And there is also an app that Patreon has for any smart device that you might own. You just download that, and that way you can access our bonus content via that app. But either way you do it, it is so easy to access all of the bonus podcasts waiting for you at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. Now get ready for a podcast that will vaporize your mind into vapor as we examine the Sealab 2021 episode Bizarro.
If you're looking for me, you better check under the seat.
Wasn't that a fun commercial? We're back with Sealab, and yes, I was just watching the Tin Fins episode where the lady says that a bunch of times.
Oh, there's so many great episodes of the show that I revisit. I love the Tin Fins one because it's just a perfect parody of like watching something on E! News and you realize it's advertising a different thing.
And I like Grizzlebees too.
Grizzlebees, yeah. That the final episode ends with the dirtiest joke they ever got away with. The shocker in Grizzlebees. And they say like you might have to talk her into this one.
Jesus Christ.
And there were other great ones. I mean, like Bebop Cola is such a perfect episode. The Legend of Baggy Pants is a really good Murphy one. And also rewatching it, I really enjoyed the one where it becomes a communist state and it then turns into that Henry Fonda film about nuclear war. And they even have the line about like, oh, that's the sound of his phone melting.
And the one about the Feast of Alvis, because in early Adult Swim days, you weren't allowed to say anything about religion or Jesus or anything. Yeah. So they made up like a stand-in for every religion and then, made fun of them.
That's the fun. I felt, you could see their frustration in that Alvis episode. That they really just wanted to make fun of Jesus and Christianity, especially in the hardcore Christian George W. Bush America. But then they're told you can't say the word Jesus. Like it was only, we talked about in our one about the Boondocks, they got to break the rules. Like they're like, no, if I can't say like Jesus and shit and the N-word, this show isn't Boondocks. So once they made that exception, then that's when you could say rip your dick off on Aqua Teen. And unfortunately, Sealab was over by that point. They couldn't be as filthy.
They missed that little, they missed that huge, barrier breaking. But I chose this one because it's the only Sealab episode I ever hear quoted.
Yeah.
Because the entire episode, and you're going to hear it in the clips, it's 30% people saying Bizarro.
Yes, yeah.
And that was very funny in 2002. And the thing about like, I'm helping Bizarro, I'm helping. I still hear that, like, I hear that like quoted on a lot of podcasts, including like Chapo Trap House. Like people, when someone is fucking things up, the joke will be, I'm helping.
I'm helping you. Yeah, that's Bizarro Quinn. His lines have been stuck in my brain ever since. And I felt like if we didn't do Bizarro, people would say like, hey, Goober, where's Bizarro?
Yeah.
Like you're talking about Bebop Cola?
That's the one you put on when you're stoned, of course.
Yeah. I mean, it is also like perfect. Just they're stuck in one room and it's just characters screaming at each other pointlessly. And also it is a very deep reference too, which I will comic bookly nerdly explain.
I do want to hear about that. So it's a very iconic episode of Sealab. Murphy's in it. There are two Murphys in it. Yes. And also, according to either Reed or Thompson, I forget, it is one of their favorite episodes. I believe it was Thompson. They were like, well, which ones are your favorites? And he was like, off the top of his head, he was like, I really like the one where it's just the characters talking about putting their brain in a robot body. And I rewatched that one and it's very funny.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a 10-minute conversation as Sealab is exploding. Characters aren't paying attention to it. They're just coming into the room being like, well, wait, what about this? And like Sparks is explaining, well, no, if you're a robot, then you have this, this, and this. It's very funny.
That's one of the brain in the robot body one, which is the final Murphy episode, has like Stormy just becomes a brain with like two little feet under him.
Oh, you're conflating that with the one where they eventually become robots.
Oh,
and this one is just the conversation.
All right.
It's one of the earlier ones.
In that last one, Stormy has one of my favorite Stormy lines ever where he's like, well, now you're a brain now. He's like, I think I'd rather be dead. Like,
some billionaires aren't paying their fair share.
Yeah.
I'm Bizarro Stormy.
I'm regular Stormy.
So, this is one of their favorite episodes, too, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So
it feels more like an Aqua Teen episode because it's villain-based. Like most C-Labs aren't about a villain comes to town and they deal with them.
The only villain I remember off the top of my head is like a crooked Make-A-Wish Foundation kid.
Yes,
who's like ripping them off.
And there's the one episode where like a famous movie star comes to town and like everybody's like sucking up to him.
Beck Bristow.
Beck Bristow.
I think that is the last Murphy episode.
Yes, that's when he's got the helmet on the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we open in the middle of action and Quinn is asking Murphy why he let them on board in the first place. We don't see who them is. And then Murphy says, at first they seem nice, but it turns out and then Bizarro Murphy Murphy's head comes into the scene and says Bizarro, and the camera zooms in on him.
Oh God, that's so. They don't always do cold opens too, so that's what's great with the just Bizarro. And yes, if the brief history of the concept of a Bizarro goes back to the Superman comics of the Silver Age in the late 1950s, one of the best. Most Superman comics, this is why Superman is tough to turn into like a fighting guy, because Silver Age Superman is a guy who faces like weirdos who distract him with like tricks or magic or something. Or in the case of meeting his imperfect clone, Bizarro Superman, he does everything reverse of what Superman does. And that turned into like, there's just something about his weird white face, chalk white face, and how he just says bad bye Superman, all that stuff that they sold. Like Bizarro just became his own thing. They're like, well, we can't just have Bizarro Superman. There's the Bizarro world where every character has a Bizarro. There's the Bizarro Batman who killed his parents and then became a supervillain.
More books to sell, more character figures to sell, things like that. It's a very fun universe.
Well, and kids respond to just like, oh, look on the cover. That's a weird drawing. Like that's why in DC Comics especially, it was all about selling the cover. Like they found out one time that Gorilla on the cover sold more copies of one superhero, and so there'd be at least one gorilla fight per year, from like Superman fights a gorilla, and then here's Batman fighting the gorilla.
It's August, time for the gorilla fight.
Kids in the 50s and 60s couldn't say no to a gorilla.
I know this is DC, and in case you don't get the reference, after Bizarro Murphy comes in and says Bizarro, we get like a fake comic cover with the regular crew squaring off against the Bizarro crew. But according to Thompson, him and Reed were way into Marvel comics, especially Fantastic Four, and he said it pisses him off so much that everyone thinks Fantastic Four is a joke because every movie has sucked.
I'm with him. I am so with him. I hopefully soon the MCU Fantastic Four will prove that the Fantastic Four could be a good thing. The Bizarro concept I think got more. If you were my mom knew Bizarro. If you grew up in the 50s and even heard of Superman, you probably knew of Bizarro. But in the 90s, it was repopularized as just a mainstream phrase because of the Seinfeld episode.
Oh, yeah. That's why I knew it. Like, I didn't know the comic ties at this point in my life. And is Bizarro Murphy like Nick Fury kind of character?
He is Nick Fury a lot, who has like floating side things, like his eye patch and scars change sides. But yes, the cover image they jump into is a very specific one.
Ooh.
It is Uncanny X-Men 100 from 1976.
Okay.
Because this was early in the new X-Men run. Short version is the X-Men always sucked in the 60s. Nobody gave a crap about them. Then in the 70s, they reboot the X-Men as this international team of all the cool X-Men people actually like. Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus. And so in X-Men 100, the then pretty new cool X-Men team is then facing off against the old X-Men who are like, hey, we still want to be the X-Men. And so on one side, you have the original 60s X-Men, other side 70s X-Men, and then in the center Xavier with his hand up going like, oh, fight.
So is Stormy a storm in this?
Oh man, I didn't look at the matchup of that, but the cover image is so striking they made that the DVD season 2 cover as well.
Yeah, that's right. And then you'll hear the Immortal theme for Sealab 2021 performed by Julie Stepanek and her band Calamine. Because this song was written in 1999, it sounds a lot like the music I like.
I love it. Yes.
Indie rock, alternative indie rock with like a girl singer.
A little twee as well. Like, if you're looking for, dated old man who loves this thing, but I do love it.
And you can find all of Calamine's music on Spotify. They didn't make a lot of it. This song is not on Spotify, of course, at least officially, but her band Calamine, like Calamine Lotion, all the music is on Spotify.
You know what? I can confirm that positionally on the right side, Stormy is in this place where Storm is.
Okay, that makes sense. So. And he controls weather, I guess, in terms of ice cubes falling out of his mouth.
And Colossus is in the place of Marco, which also fits. So, yeah.
I will say also that, like our Aqua Teen Hunger Force episode, it's a 10-minute cartoon. I clip most of it.
Yes.
Because otherwise this would be over very quickly and we would just be describing, and then they say Bizarro. Anyways, moving on.
More Bizarro is said, yes.
So let's hear our first clip, what happens after the opening song.
For the last time, cretins, where is the Destructo Beam?
Look, we don't have one of those.
Just give them the damn beans.
We don't have a beam.
The Destructo Beam is the most powerful destructive weapon ever wrought by man, capable of vaporizing Earth into vapor.
Why would we blow up the Earth where we are right now?
Because it's Bizarro.
It's stupid.
Bizarro.
Stupid! You dirty coward! Untie me, you bastards! I'll take you all myself!
Bizarro, Marco.
What? What is that supposed to be? Are you freaking out? No, just pissed off. Bizarro pissed off?
So yeah, Bizarro Marco bites into an 8-ball.
Yes.
Is he supposed to be like Jaws from James Bond?
Yeah. He's Jaws from James Bond. So there's a lot of mixing of references here. It's Bizarro is a Superman concept, but then it's posed kind of like the Evil Twins and any other comic. Like these guys don't follow the Bizarro principle of saying like goodbye equals bad bye, bad is good. It's just saying Bizarro over and over.
Using Bizarro as a modifier, and then when someone says, let's do this, don't you mean Bizarro do this?
I also like that they just punch Sparks in the face at the very start because he'd be the most annoyed. They're like, nah, shut up, Sparks. Like you just need Quinn to be like, we don't have this. Shut up.
And all of I can describe all of the characters in case you're not, you don't have access to this. So like Bizarro Debbie has pink hair and a robot arm. Bizarro Sparks is just a head in a jar. And Bizarro Marco, as we said, is just kind of like a Jaws from a James Bond parody. And then Bizarro Stormy has like white anime hair.
And every time he opens his mouth, ice cubes fall out.
Yeah.
I like to, everybody's tied up differently. Sparks is entirely ropes. It's just ropes all around him. And of course, Debbie is tied in such a way that her boobs are like lifted up by a rope underneath them. Yeah.
It's they lift and separate.
Yeah. Well, look, again, it's Debbie. She has boobs. They're going to talk about them. They're going to. I also noticed that one big difference in this episode from a lot of their classic ones is it doesn't have this technique that they use so much in Archer, which is like cutting on dialogue that a person says, "Hey, I'm pissed off," and then it cuts to another place. I said I'm pissed off. Like there's some later Sealabs that do that a lot. Oh man, we didn't even talk about the right. When you talk about Sealab time wasters, that is a time waster.
Then they spent a lot of money on animation, very limited and crude, but still with the scenes, they have to like cut to a bunch of different montages.
It does seem very expensive. Yeah.
In the terms of the limited animation, of course. So Bizarro Debbie is very upset with this. She's wants to cut to the chase. She says, "I say we just gut him," and I believe it's Bizarro Sparks that says, "Don't you mean Bizarro gut them?"
Yes. The Bizarros are even correcting each other on the use of the word Bizarro, and just that Marco has the right reaction, like I'm not freaking out, no, just pissed off. Like
they're just annoying.
It's wasting time. Like I think they do represent the audience. Like, oh, this is what it's going to be, huh? Just screaming Bizarro.
Once we get to Bizarro Vision, you'll see what a waste of time this is. So, yeah, it's like, I'm Bizarro Stormy. I'm regular Stormy. And
they love each other.
Yeah.
Stormies just get along.
He's just so innocent. And Bizarro, Debbie tells both of them to shut up. And, of course, the rejoinder is, don't you mean Bizarro shut up?
He's like, no, I don't. Shut up.
So finally Murphy gives in and says,
he says, where's the beans? Give him the beans. Not beam.
And Quinn thinks Murphy's stalling them. She's like, you stall them, I'll think of a plan. And of course, the thing I forgot to mention is Dr. Quinn, obviously reference to Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, not a black man, but a white woman on CBS.
It kind of emasculates his character to a degree. Everybody's like, oh, Dr. Quinn, and that and that is not the character's name in Sealab 2020. Like you said, only Murphy and Sparks have their original names.
And then Bizarro Murphy, his next quote is, "You'll think of nothing once your mind is blown by the razor-sharp intellect of Bizarro Quinn." And then we meet Bizarro Quinn in this next clip.
What? My guy's an egg? How is that gonna blow my mind? Oh, sweet God! Holy crap! That's nasty.
Now, where are the diamonds?
I thought you wanted a laser beam.
Now we want both. And to show you just how serious we are. Bizarro Stormy?
I am Bizarro Stormy. I'm regular Stormy.
Show them how serious we are.
No, Dad! You just weird Jesus!
Okay.
Show them how serious we are.
And there's plenty more where that came from.
And yeah, Bizarro Stormy shoots off his own head when he's handed a laser gun. And I must say, like, even though the animation is cheap, I was watching this on HBO Max in surround sound, and you can hear like Bizarro Quinn like jumping around the room, like behind you and in front of you. So if you have surround sound, this show is a lot of work went into the sound design.
You are engulfed in Bizarro Quinn just jumping around. Hearing Stormy, regular Stormy, in the background, like, holy bejesus, like that's one of my favorite canned phrases they just play of like, oh, can't Stormy react to this with holy bejesus? Like
I think like, oh dear sweet lord or whatever. Don't they reuse that? Whatever the reaction is to Bizarro Quinn, which is a weird bird-like creature that's just hopping around. It's like covered in mucus after it hatches out of an egg, and it's just like jumping around crazily.
They take the Quinn face design, make his skin Caucasian, and then give him like a Ronald McDonald wig and a beak over his mouth, and it is disturbing just to look at.
And
like,
for no reason, like Quinn is confused, like, my guy's an egg?
Yeah, he's like, what? Why is that me? How is that the opposite of me? Another of my favorite Stormy sayings in the show is in the breakup episode where he says, dear God, don't strike me blind, when the girls are making out in front of him, and then just lightning strikes him and he has glasses and a cane now, and he's like, sweet crackers, I'm blind. It's like sweet crackers.
I'm going to start using these in real life and get lots of looks from people.
Sweet crackers is a good way of just like, it's much more fun than like, holy crap.
It's really hard. I'm looking at my notes and it's hard to describe like what's happening because it doesn't follow any logic. So Bizarro Murphy wants to know who's feeling talky, and then Murphy's just like, give him the damn laser diamond beam. He doesn't even know what Bizarro Murphy wants at this point,
because Bizarro Murphy switched to like diamonds. Like, well, wait, I thought you wanted the beam and that. Both things.
He wants the diamonds too. And then Bizarro Debbie, apparently her breasts have like ESP. They're sensing that Quinn knows something, and this is when Sparks says, cut his entire body off. He just wants to like murder people. Bizarro
he did that
Sparks.
at some point. But yes, I mean, Bizarro Debbie and Debbie want to fuck Quinn. That's their main thing. I mean, they're having some fun with the visual of a black guy who has sex with a white woman. I think that's part of the comedy aspect of it.
And hearing a lot of it, which is not, I'm not going to play a lot of clips of that, but Bizarro Debbie.
I think the actors had fun with that.
Oh yeah. Especially shouting Bizarro.
Yes.
Bizarro Debbie takes Quinn away to interrogate him with her breasts. And Marco is just buying fully into what's happening here, and he says, don't talk, Quinn. And Quinn just says, I don't know anything. He said they don't have diamonds, they don't have this vaporizing laser that will turn the earth into vapor.
That is, classic Sealab as well, that a character like demands something that doesn't exist, and everyone just keeps yelling at each other like, no, give it to me, it doesn't exist, shut up. Like,
there's I think of like when someone stole Captain Murphy's Easy Bake Oven.
Oh yes,
the Tasty Cake Oven.
Just wasting time, or they just like Quinn just has to yell in people's faces like, don't like the blackout episode of just like darkness. It's just Murphy going over and over again like, I am unplugging everything. I destroyed that. I destroyed this. I want us to have no power. Like, why? Why do you do
You know
this?
what? That episode is just a podcast.
Yes.
And actually, the show is kind of a podcast, too.
Yeah. No offense to the great.
Yeah.
There are people who worked, I'm sure, very late nights animating this show.
So Quinn is being taken away to have sex with Bizarro Debbie, and Bizarro Murphy says, maybe his screams will loosen your tongue. And Bizarro Sparks is floating around to mock them, and this is when Bizarro Quinn grabs grabs his head in the jar, jumps around with it, and then breaks it on the ground.
I think they hate the Sparks character because he gets killed more than most in the show. Like especially in this episode, regular Sparks gets punched in the face and knocked unconscious and speaks no more for the episode. And then before the halfway point of this, Bizarro Sparks is murdered too.
I think in the main show, like Sparks is the most sinister.
Yeah,
like he's the most like disconnected emotionally from anything that's happening.
Well, because he's not an idiot like other characters, so instead they go with the other early aughts trope of like absolute sociopath. Like he's like, well, I'll just kill everyone here and steal what I want. That's his joke, which that can write yourself into a corner of like, okay, he's a sociopath. Where do you go from here? Well, meanwhile, a stupid person who doesn't learn anything like Murphy or Stormy, endless comedy there. Yeah,
I totally agree. This is when Bizarro Sparks dies because Bizarro Quinn, the bird creature, breaks him on the ground, says, "We're friends," and now it's time for the crew to escape.
Come on, now's our chance to escape.
Too freaked out. Don't you mean bizarroed out? Oh, yeah?
I'm helping you.
Dr. Quinn's bizarro torture begins.
You animals! What is she doing to him?
Yeah, baby.
Give it to me, baby. Yeah. Bizarro! Bizarro!
That's right.
Bizarro!
Oh, damn.
Oh, yeah, you nasty little freak. Yeah.
Good Lord, she's killing him.
Yeah, and that goes on for a while. But I must say it is gratuitous, but also 2002 Adult Swim, pretty risque material.
Oh yeah,
no one else was having sex in any of these shows.
That loudly having sex, and the only real negative I have on it, other than that it goes on too long, is. When Quinn goes like, "Shut up, woman," I'm like, that's a little mean.
Maybe it's consensual, that kind of play.
Hey, that's a good point.
Yeah.
They seem like they have a lot of give and take in that sexual, based on a description later of what they do.
Yes, and we'll get to that twice.
But I do love that like Murphy is bizarroed out, not freaked out, and then he just laughs together because Bizarro Murphy and Murphy are the same idiot. Like they're
not different characters at all. One just has an eye patch.
But I think one of the funniest things I ever saw on Sealab is salt being poured on top of a severed head in water, saying, I'm helping you."
And that is the main quote people take from this episode. Is someone fucking something up but thinking they're helping.
And so, like, God, it's just the contrast of. No one would think pouring salt on a dying, like, fish man who needs water to breathe would be helping. But the insistence of Bizarro Quinn saying, I'm helping you, I'm helping.
That was the appeal of this show because, 2001, we're like 5 or 6 years into cable having original programming. When you're turning through the channels at like 11:30, 11:45, you see this, you're like, what the fuck?
Yes.
And then you leave it on because you just want to know what you're watching. And that was the appeal of, like... programming this insane.
If you're up that late, you're in it. Yes, yeah.
So Bizarro Quinn, the disgusting little monster, offers to help make Quinn jealous, and Debbie is repulsed by this disgusting mutant bird version of Quinn, the man she loves. And Murphy, not even understanding what's going on, just goes, "That's it. Resist his charms."
Because Murphy's in love with Bizarro Quinn. He's like, you know what? He sees something in him. That Debbie, poor Debbie. Like I also don't like Bizarro Quinn saying "likey." Much. But that she is like disgusted at this idea. Meanwhile, that Stormy is like begging for sex. Like, I like too that Debbie's like, can we kill him? Like, yeah.
It's a good idea. More sex noises are happening as Bizarro Quinn is sort of like gyrating on Debbie's lap.
I love that Bizarro Debbie is saying yes, Bizarro yes, while Debbie is saying no.
Bizarro yes is no. Come on. So let's move on to the interrogation of Stormy, the living Stormy.
Hey, I know some stuff. Interrogate me.
Okay.
No.
Bizarro! I hate the Bizarros. Don't you mean you hate the Bizarro?
Bizarro!
Bizarro! Bizarro! Bizarro! Like a little turtle. Don't you mean a Bizarro turtle?
That's it. I've had it with this. All of it. You people are idiots.
Silly little turtle.
You are the dumbest villains I've ever seen. We don't have any lasers, and we don't have any freaking diamonds.
So yeah, I left that. I mean, I'm clipping all of this, but just the audio chaos that's happening. I want to point out, I enjoyed the show before I started smoking pot or drinking. I was sober watching these things in 2001.
I mean, it makes you feel like you're stoned watching it. It like without the visuals of at least like it keeps cutting between like Stormy's head being twisted or zoom ins on other characters. To just have the audio of like Bizarro, 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 like just this loud noise.
And before it was just the little mutant Quinn jumping around saying Bizarro. Now they're all just saying it. They would usually say to modify things that you're saying, but no, now they're just going Bizarro, Bizarro.
I love that. I think Debbie says right after, like, the only thing you're good at is screaming Bizarro all the time. Like, that's it.
And that's when Bizarro Debbie's having Bizarro orgasms behind the scenes, and Debbie is calling her a whore.
Yes, yeah, you're a whore, and you're a bastard for having sex with that whore. And like, but Bizarro Debbie's into it. She's like, yes, I am. I'm like, that's just egging her on. She's enjoying it all the more.
You know, a simpler time, but 2002, hearing whore and bastard on Cartoon Network, pretty cool.
We were so easily entertained back then. Like, wow, they said a word on this channel I couldn't hear before. Now when I've heard every word and seen everything that's on a TV channel, where do you go from there?
Yeah, you have to invent new swears.
Yeah.
So now it's time for more Bizarro.
Oh, this little guy. Buddy, if I had a peanut, I'd give it to you.
Bizarro, I love you. Bizarro, I love you.
Hey, who's got a peanut for turtle face? Don't, he's allergic.
They'll kill me. Well, I tried everything. He wouldn't talk.
Oh, whatever.
Way to go, Quinn. Did you try him in the...
Yes.
Twice. That usually works. Way to go, Quinn.
I did. I did what I could.
You're a bastard.
Enough. It is now clear to me that this calls for stronger methods of persuasion.
Don't you mean Bizarro persuasion?
Yeah, make it really Bizarro. Oh, Bizarro.
Silence. I will now apply your minds with Bizarro vision.
You know, I have a parrot, as we all know, and he does say I love you, and he does like peanuts.
Yes,
so I need to teach you how to say Bizarro.
I mean, just his sing-songy. That's why I made him my intro thing. Just the Bizarro, I love you, Bizarro. Like, it does turn him into like a parrot or just this like simple talking thing that's just like, and then just like, he'll kill me. Oh, God.
He wants to die, I think.
You know, as homophobic as the early aughts were, I was surprised they did a joke about a woman fucking him in the ass.
Yes.
And I mean, because that I hate to be that dirty.
That's what Bizarro Murphy says. That's bleeped.
He said, like, so did you try fucking him in the ass? And she apparently did it twice, and he's proud of it. Like, it's, you know, any butt stuff, even in a heterosexual relationship, was seen as wrong in the odds.
There's not even like a hint of gay panic. I'm sure there's some in many other episodes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, this next scene is gratuitous. It's about a minute of like this Winamp screensaver.
That really saves some time and budget, I'd bet. Yeah.
Of course, with everyone chanting Bizarro. But
and at this point, I noticed that Bizarro Murphy's scars and eye patch just swap sides. Like they never. I would bet it's intentional, but it's funnier to me even if it's just like amateurish.
Yeah.
Just like they just forgot.
It's like, I'm not going to redraw this. Just flip the model.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like a minute of this Winamp equalizer. Everyone is chanting Bizarro. Well, the Bizarros are chanting Bizarro, but the joke is like they are being hypnotized by Bizarro vision. Nobody else is. Captain Murphy wants to watch this. He's like, shh, movie. When he's talking to Bizarro Quinn.
He's loving it. And apparently somehow feeding him peanuts during the movie, we find out later.
Yeah.
And that's when Quinn, regular Quinn, has to free them. his walk is some of the worst. I was like, ooh, that's rough.
Is it like just like kind of puppety, like bouncing up and down?
Yeah, but not like barely even that. Yeah, it's more like he kind of swims over to them almost.
And this, like, I don't appreciate it as much now, but at the time, this, like, I'm an old man, all right? This was 2002. To see time wasted so exquisitely on TV was magical back then. And just a minute of people chanting Bizarro and just like this pattern on the screen.
Bizarro.
Just like while Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is on another channel or whatever. Like, I love how they're just wasting your time and you're watching it and ads are being placed before and after this.
You're a party to the time wasting and you feel special for it. You're happy to have your time wasted by that. That TV could be that. Yeah, I loved it then, and I still think like, wow, how ballsy even now. Like, I don't feel like I'd watch a thing new that wastes that much time intentionally.
And this was years before Family Guy would say, "Now Conway Twitty," and then he'd play an entire song. Like they were the pioneers of like wasting all of your time
for sure.
So Quinn switches off Bizarro Vision, and the Bizarro party is Bizarro over.
Okay, listen up, Bizarro people. Party's over. You gotta go.
Okay.
What's going on?
Bizarro Vision. Hypnotized, baby.
Yeah, well, you're a bastard.
Wait! They're hypnotized. Turtleface, you're a chicken.
I'm in need for you.
Okay, get out. Okay, Quinn, untie us. Hurry up before they...
Greetings, fools. Give us the Destructo Beam or suffer the Bizarro consequences.
We already gave it to you. It's in your truck.
To the truck!
Untie us now, hurry.
Seriously, how do we get out of here?
Hit two!
Thank you.
I like how Quinn is like lazily writing an ending for this episode. He just says, "We already gave it to you. It's in the truck."
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah, and that I think too. They probably had like, are we at 10 minutes and 30 seconds? They're like, no, not yet. Open the door another time.
Yeah, they keep coming back. Hit two.
Yeah, and what wonderfully lazy resolution that they're just like, we did it. Like, go away. Okay. Yeah, we'll go away.
They for no reason they just go away.
Yep.
For no reason, rather.
Raisin. Yeah.
So yeah, and then there's usually like a scene over the credits because it's a very short show. Usually it's out of fourth wall breaking. This time it's actually a continuation of the story. So Captain Murphy is very tickled by what happens after the Bizarro people leave.
Man, I'm glad that's over. Damn!
What a bunch of idiots.
You're a bastard. What is so funny?
I gave... During the movie, I gave Turtleface a whole bag of peanuts.
And even the Cartoon Network logo after that has Bizarro Quinn bouncing on it.
That's right. Yeah,
so they knew he would take off, right?
The Bizarros took it all over. I wonder how many shirts they sold with Bizarro Quinn.
I was just about to look that up. Can I buy a Bizarro Quinn shirt? I'll be the coolest nearly 40-year-old man on my block.
It's also, I mean, that's also the darkness of the show that they even have Murphy, who loves Bizarro Quinn. He indiscriminately murdered him. Like, he's like, I'm laughing because I fed him things that will kill him. Like,
Bizarro Quinn did not deserve to live.
And then a quick shot of the Groovies after that, right?
Yes, I hate the Groovies.
I hate the Groovies.
Like hippie versions of the Sealab people come onto the ship, and they're the Groovies, and they're all tied up again, and they want the Groovy beam.
I'm surprised they never really did a full Bizarro sequel episode, because it was just so memorable. But yeah.
I don't know when this is from. I'm looking at the some action figures. Apparently, Palisades Toys made Sealab figures, and you can buy one that has Bizarro Debbie and Bizarro Quinn in the same pack. I don't know what year it's from, though.
Fun. Man, I want to get that then. Yeah, I love it.
I got to teach Louie how to say I love you like Bizarro Quinn. But yeah, I mean, that is really it for Sealab. And I think it's funny. I just don't know if you had to be there. Like, if I showed this to my wife, who had to watch things like Teletoon and Much Music, as they had in Canada, or the Youth Network, the Youth Television Network.
Oh, YTV.
Yeah. I don't know if like this would be as funny to her as it was to me, because I feel like Sealab, some stand on their own, but with this I feel like you had to be there.
Yeah.
And just like nothing was this weird or as just ambitious in how much it wanted to waste your time or piss you off.
And there's still stuff that, like, I didn't even mention the show has its own Apu that just makes you uncomfortable. Like, I think too, if you've seen Archer but not this show, maybe it does feel just like going backwards and you're like watching, oh, this is a worse version of Archer, you know? Or maybe if you're a young 20-something now, maybe it speaks to you the same and just how much it wastes time. At the very least, it is a wonderful encapsulation of early aughts comedy.
Yes.
and that taste.
With all of its warts and all of its good qualities as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Adam or Matt would want to revisit this. I don't know if they would have to get permission first because they don't own the characters. One thing I did hear from them that I forgot to mention is that they heard that people that worked on Sealab were upset. The original series, because Iwao Takamoto was still around for I think most of the 2000s, right?
Oh yeah.
And he, of course, I don't know if it was him that was mad, but to see your innocent characters warped and moved around like puppets, I'm sure you'd be like, well, come on, guys, I worked hard on that.
Well, I know on a bigger scale, Space Ghost fans of original Space Ghost hated what Space Ghost did to it. So I would bet it's just similar issues.
I mean, there are no original fans of Sealab 2020, but if you're an original fan of Space Ghost, what's your problem? It sucks.
I think it was the amazing comic artist Alex Ross he was really behind a comic book that was meant to give prestige again to the original concept of Space Ghost, but it's like, no, once you see Zorak or Brack written as they originally were, it's like, I can't go back. They're jokes.
I like Zorak as a band leader.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, that has been this episode of What a Cartoon, all about Sealab. I hope you enjoyed it. As for more about what we do, if you want to support the show and get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up there to get just that and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall that includes all of the limited miniseries and bonus podcasts we've been doing for 4+ years. You'll be able to access all of those immediately, and we have another miniseries coming up in the fall of 2021 only for patrons at that level or higher, and our most recent miniseries was Talking of the Hill Season 2 Part 1. That was 11 new episodes of our Talking of the Hill series, all about King of the Hill. You can get that all at the $5 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, and we have a $10 level as well. Sign up for that. You get all the $5 stuff, plus also access to one super long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
That's the What a Cartoon movie podcast, which if you're listening to What a Cartoon on the free feed, you know it because you get the free preview of it each month. But once a month, often for over 4 hours, sometimes up to 5, we talk about an animated feature film as super in-depth as we cover animated series. And in our Disney Renaissance summer, we covered 1997's Hercules, 1996's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and coming at the end of this month, we're covering 1994's The Lion King to finish it all off. So I think you'll really enjoy those. And we have almost 3 years worth of What a Cartoon movies you can listen to, over 150 hours if you sign up at the $10 level, and you get all the $5 things Bob just mentioned. Films as diverse as Akira to a Goofy movie and everything in between. So please sign up today at the $10 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons to hear it all.
As for me, I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo. And my other podcast, by the way, is Retronauts. That is a classic gaming podcast about old video games. You can find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. Sign up there for 2 full-length bonus episodes every month. And Henry, what about you?
Keep up to date with Henry Gilbert if you follow HENEREYG on Twitter. And follow, please, the official Twitter account of our podcast network at Talk Simpsons Pod. Whenever new podcasts go up for Talking Simpsons or for What a Cartoon or for any of our side stuff, you stay up to date about it if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time for our extended free preview of our What a Cartoon movie episode all about The Lion King, and we will see you then.
Lifestyle all about girls and cars. Getting fucked up and fucked up. See, I'm not a retard or gay like the barge. I'm large and in charge with a face so scarred. A cold black heart that's been torn apart. The Sith wish that they had a dick so hard. Cause it's long, long ago when a pussy far, far. Call me master, cause I'm faster to pry on fire. I no longer have to hot wire. I'm a hunter for hire with no plans to retire. And all the sucker MCs can't call me sire. My backpack's got jets.
Look, turtle face, Star Wars. Yes! You will be bewildered and amazed by Bizarro Vision.
Bizarro. 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 Bizarro.
Psst, Quinn, check it out.
Bizarro. 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 Bizarro.
Aww.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.